right, for the terms or vocabulary of music class, we're just going to review a couple of things that Miss Grace started teaching you at the beginning of the session. So the first thing that I want to review is the Baroque period. And the Baroque period went from the 1650s to the 1750s. It is usually described as organized. What am I doing? There we go. I guess I have to do it this way. Organized, flowery, and expressive. So, and you'll notice that in some of the examples that we choose to do. But anyway, Baroque. If you have trouble remembering the Baroque period, just tell yourself this little joke. If it's not Baroque, then don't fix it. I know, it's like a dad joke. Some examples of composers from the Baroque period are Antonio Vivaldi and J.S. Bach. We were able to listen to Vivaldi, I think, in the first lesson of this session, but in case you missed it, here is Vivaldi's Spring. Obviously, it's called the Four Seasons, so each movement is a different season, and this is called Spring. And here's where we are right here. Fun fact is that Antonio Vivaldi actually wrote that for a group of girls in an orphanage who played string instruments, and they actually performed that for the first time in an orphanage. It was really cool. He was called the red-haired composer because he had flaming red hair, and he always volunteered. He volunteered his time at one point at this orphanage, and the girls always called him our red-headed maestro or something like that. I can't remember, but they had a nickname for him, their teacher. Johann Sebastian Bach is also another example of Baroque period music. He is probably going to be your best example for the Baroque period because a lot of people will automatically think of J.S. Bach when they think of Baroque. And so this is one of his most famous organ pieces. It's called the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Just beautiful. Bach wrote a lot of organ music because he worked in churches for pretty much his whole life, and they all had organs back then, beautiful, huge organs. And he was very picky about his work. He really was a hard worker, and actually he signed his music Soli Deo Gloria, which means to God be the glory. So he dedicated every piece of his music to God. And he, on his compositions, some of them can, if you have a copy of it, you can still see his handwriting on that, Soli Deo Gloria. Okay, so that is examples of the Baroque that we talked about last time. George Frederick Handel, I say Handel because in music school they were very picky about how you pronounce his name, and they always said it was pronounced Handel. You can say Handel, either way is fine, I don't care. But he might have cared, but he's dead now, so he doesn't care anymore. But he was also a Baroque composer, and actually he was kind of right on par with Bach. So a lot of people, when they think of Bach, they think of Handel too. But he outlived Bach by 9 years. And let's see. This is the one we're going to focus on today. It's called A la Hornpipe. And it's from his piece called Water Music. Or actually, it's a bunch of pieces put together. And it's called Water Music for a reason, but I'll let you listen to it first. what's called hornpipe. It does use oboes and bassoons as well, so wind instruments as well. And how do I turn it off? I can't remember. The reason this is called water music is because George Frederick Handel worked really closely, was one of the favorite composers of King George I in England at the time, and he was actually performing on the River Thames, which is a very famous river that goes through London. And he was giving his concert on a boat, on a big barge. He had 50 musicians on the barge. And on another barge right next to him, or right upstream there, was the king. So King George and his guests were on another barge listening to his music. And so he played, Handel had his musicians play a variety of music that he had worked on. And the king liked it so much, he asked it to be played 3 times. So, when you really like something, you ask to play, can we do it again? Can we do it again? So he really liked it. That was a really good compliment. They played it 3 times, and this set of music became known as water music because they were played on the water. Okay, so we're going to jump to the classical period, do a review of that. Before I guess I should get to sonata first. Let me do sonata first before I forget. The term for this week is sonata. It means sound. And it's a composition for an instrumental soloist, often accompanied by piano. So if you think about a vocal soloist, they would stand by the piano would start, and then the vocalist would start singing. It's very similar, only the piano starts, and then there's an instrumentalist who goes. And then I have an example here. By Schubert. This is a violin sonata in A major. So here's the piano, it starts out, and the violin will enter with a solo. There it is. And the piano is still going underneath. Now, there is a thing called sonata form that CC says we should talk about this week. And basically, it is a type of composition in 3 sections. It's called the exposition, development, and the recapitulation. It's kind of like ABA form, or like a pattern that the music is in. And then that was the example we just listened to. It was Schubert's violin sonata in A major. So those are your terminology for this week. And then we're gonna jump to classical quickly and just do a quick introduction. Classical period. By the way, when Baroque ended, a lot of people say that Baroque ended with Bach because Bach actually died in 1750. So a lot of musicians will just say that is basically the end of the Baroque period. So that's why classical period starts in the 1750s as well, and then goes into the early 1800s. This was more emotionally reserved than Baroque music. People thought it was more sophisticated. They wanted to listen to something that was prim and proper and socially acceptable. So that's kind of what classical period. It still had rules that you had to follow when you wrote the music, very similar to Baroque. And of course, the most famous classical composer is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. There are so many examples of what he wrote. Let me see. I'm sure you've heard this one. If not by listening on some commercial or something had it. I actually grew up playing a video game of Speedy Gonzales, and this is what played in the background. So that's how I know it. How do you know it? It goes like this. And this is where we are, right here. Back to the first theme, so that was kind of like an ABA form. Okay, Ludwig van Beethoven is kind of an interesting character in music history because he started out in the classical period. He was actually a really big fan of Mozart's and really wanted to be like Mozart. But then as he got, so some of his younger music, when he was younger, it was more classical, sounded more classical. But as he grew and expanded his knowledge and expanded his expression, that's when romantic music was born. So a lot of people say that the romantic era or romantic period was begun by Beethoven. You'll probably know him from his symphonies. This one especially. Let me go back. There we go. That's Symphony 5 in C minor. But he was extremely well known for his symphonies. In fact, so much so that he was called a giant in that era and in that area. So when other people would ask other musicians, other popular musicians like Brahms or whoever, about hey, are you going to write a symphony? They would say, I will never write a symphony. Like, not when I'm being followed around by this giant, because nobody wanted to be compared to Beethoven. For a symphony. So most people, so he basically dominated the symphony while he was alive. This is his other famous symphony. This is from Symphony number 9, but you'll know that this movement is Ode to Joy. And then it gets really loud at the end. There it goes. And there are words to this. And they're in German. Speak a little bit of German too. That is it for the review section. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but I am going to do one more recording because we're at just under 15 minutes right now. I'm going to do one more recording since we're focusing on George Frederick Handel. I have this book that I'm going to read aloud and show you pictures of. So younger children might, or elementary students, any elementary students might be interested in this. This is the Famous Children series. They're really a cool series. I mean, it's a thin paperback, but it gives a lot of information. It's historical fiction for kids. Well, I would say it's mostly nonfiction because it gives tons of facts. But some of the interactions in here might be a little bit embellished, but for the most part, it's very factual. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And then I'm going to upload another video of me reading Handel. Okay? Bye.